Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of 1st and 2nd Peter. And last time we were together, we introduced the two books together, and we mentioned the importance of the burning of Rome in July of AD 64 and how it provides the setting, really, of both books. We talked a bit about the persecution that followed immediately in the wake of the burning of Rome. Nero, of course, blamed Christians, something that's detailed throughout the Roman historians, particularly Tacitus. I know I've read Tacitus to you before. People knew that the likely culprit for setting the fire was Nero himself, or at least his agents. But Christians were not well thought of or well liked, and the Roman government has now understood that Christians are not Jews. And we mentioned last time that Judaism is a legal religion in Rome, and Christians are not Jews. Something else that's about to happen is in the process of happening in the mid-60s, and that is the Jewish rebellion. The Romans are evicted from Jerusalem briefly before the Romans retake the city. That process actually takes a couple of years, but Jews themselves are not well thought of and are enemies of the state, at least those in Palestine who are promoting the rebellion are at the time. So it's a rough time to be a Christian, and First Peter is about dealing with that, and it was used that way. There's evidence that in the first few centuries of the church that the book of First Peter was widely disseminated and taught, particularly to new Christians, almost as a first principles class and almost as a survival class, almost as boot camp for new Christians, because it is so full of basic doctrine and theology, which we'll notice next time when we look at just the opening verses. But also, it's about how we survive persecution. And Christians in Rome were thrown into the deep end. Now, I don't want you to think that there was unrelenting persecution of Christians for 3 centuries before the Edict of Milan and Constantine legalized Christianity, because there wasn't. In fact, for a long period of time, between 149 AD and the persecution of Decius in the 280s, Christianity had a level of protection. Christianity was not a legalized religion, but Hadrian in 149 AD issued his rescript. That's the name of the decree that he released, in which he said, you cannot persecute Christians simply because they're Christians. If a Christian commits a crime and you can prove that they're a Christian, you can charge them with the crime of being a Christian. This is an important distinction, because Christians have been arguing all along, we are obedient to the laws. And we are rule keepers. We're good citizens. And according to Hadrian's rescript, unless you can prove that a Christian has committed another crime, you cannot arrest that Christian simply for being a Christian. So, for instance, if you were arrested for theft, which is not a capital offense, you could be charged as well with Christianity, which is a capital offense. And we don't have to stretch our imagination too far to understand why local authorities would like to do that, and charge someone with being a Christian. It would help them get a plea. But persecution is localized, and one of the places where persecution is the most intense over the period of time between the writing of this book and the legalization of Christianity is in Turkey. And this is exactly where this letter is addressed, as we'll notice next time. It's clear throughout the letter that it's being written from in the wake of the Roman persecution. He talks about the fiery ordeal that they're undergoing in chapter 4. That's not a metaphor for anything. Christians were being burnt alive. Christians were being sewn up in animal skins and fed alive to the wild beasts in the forum. That was happening to Christians in the wake of the burning of Rome. He also makes clear from chapter 5 of 1 Peter that he's writing from, as he says, from Babylon. That's a metaphor, that's a euphemism, that's a code name for the city of Rome. Also, Silas and Mark are there working with Peter at this time. Silas and Mark are Paul's people. In fact, Mark has been sent for to arrive in Rome by Paul. He tells Timothy at the end of 2 Timothy, I need you on your way to Rome to stop and pick up Mark and bring him with you because I need him. He's profitable for my ministry. And so since we have Mark and Silas, who are Paul's men, working for Peter, we can probably conclude a couple of things. One is Peter is in actual deep dark jail, and Paul is, and Peter is not. And so Peter has, Paul's men there working with him, or that Paul's already dead and Peter hasn't been executed yet. They're both going to lose their lives in this persecution, and the best of our information is that Paul dies first. I tend to believe that 1st and 2nd Peter are written in that short period of time between Paul's execution and Peter's execution, and that's what we are looking at. There's so much in 1 Peter, and we're going to see that just by looking at the first 2 verses, which is what we'll do when we're together next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.